Okay. Really appreciate you taking the time to take a look at this. I really think it's going to be helpful. I have already created you an account, and there's a link in your email that I sent to you to this website, which is app-beta.heytreya.com. This is the early access version of Treya. And since I've already created you that account, you can simply type in the email that I sent the email to, so the one that I have for you, and hit forgot password, and that's going to give you the opportunity to set the password for it. You will get an email quite quickly. Make sure to check your spam folder from this admin@heytreya.com. Go ahead and give that link a click, and you'll be taken to the reset password screen where you can enter whatever password you like. This is using Google's identity platform, so this is very safe, very secure. You could suggest a password from your browser, which is what I would recommend. Hit reset password, and it'll be great, all good to go. It'll take you back to the login screen. You'll also most likely get a little pop-up here that asks you to save your password, and I do highly recommend that you save passwords within your browser, not write them down on a piece of paper. And now that I've changed that password, I can log in. And that is going to take me to the primary screen, which is the deal screen. I don't want to start here. This is a really important feature of the application. We're going to get there in a moment. But I want to first take a peek at some of the other options out here, in particular the leads portion of the application. So I'm going to click on leads. It's going to take me to a very similar looking screen. And this is where I'm going to track leads. So folks that I need to talk to, folks that might be a prospect, someone who could be a referral source or a partner that I go to market with. And I'm going to go ahead and add a new lead by clicking here in the top right corner. And let's just say that is Bob Smith, and they work for Apple Inc. because you're a baller and you got big clients. And we have an email for Bob. We'll go ahead and save that. And that drops Bob into one of our stages for lead management, which is not yet contacted. We could, of course, drag Bob into a prospect once we've talked to Bob, into a strategic connection. Maybe Bob's not a fit for us, or we already have such a great relationship with Bob, we don't need to track him in here anymore. We drop him into the archive. And, we got Bob here, but we have not yet talked to Bob. So we're going to send him an email. We send him that email. Of course, Bob does not respond right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a reminder for next Tuesday to follow up with Bob or make sure that we have some sort of correspondence with Bob. This is the basics of the lead feature. It's a way for you to track who you need to talk to, what kind of lead they are, and stay on top of the folks that you need to stay on top of to make sure that you are getting opportunities in the door. You could, of course, change things about Bob. Great. When you have talked to leads or when you have an opportunity arise, that's what the deals part is for. Deals are when you're actually identifying a problem or opportunity that a client has, and you're constructing a solution. You're saying, these are what terms I'm proposing. This is the things that we're going to do for you. This is how much it's going to cost. This is when you're going to get invoices. This is how much they're going to be for. We are telling you this in a proposal, and then we are now going to a statement of work, and you are signing that statement of work, and we're dragging that deal into close one. That's what deals are for. So let's create a new deal. I can click in the top right corner here. I can click on the plus button, and we're going to say we're going to start this deal in the identifying phase. That is when we know that there's an opportunity, but we don't know exactly what it's going to be quite yet. We need to be working on it. And this is going to be our deal screen. So this is what you'll see when you're managing a deal. And first, let's give this deal a name. Let's say we talked to Bob. Bob says, yeah, we got some really cool dev work that you can work on. There's this project we have coming up. It's a new mobile application that synchronizes with your watch. So I'll click on that edit field to get me into the settings, which I could have clicked on the settings too. And I'm going to name this, mobile watch app. We can add a client. That's going to be helpful for reporting in the future. Right now, we're going to leave it alone, and I'll go ahead and save this. And great, we have the mobile watch app. The project plan is where a lot of the meat is, right? This is where we are going to construct the terms of our deal. So let's just do something very basic. We're going to say that this project that we're proposing here, we're going to start with a discovery phase. And then we're going to move into a proof of concept. Next, we're going to do some development work. And then we're going to spend some time deploying. This little yellow indicator over here indicates that, hey, you've got a name for each one of these phases, but you also need to tell us when that is going to occur relative to the project. And so we don't want to deal in absolute dates here, because when we're dealing with client work, they move dates around. Things might start a little bit later. What we want to do is say, all right, based on when the beginning of this project is, so the week number 1, discovery is going to start on the first week, and it's going to take 4 weeks, is what we believe it's going to take. And then once we get into a proof of concept, we're going to say, all right, so right after discovery, starting on week 4, that's going to take us about 6 weeks. And then when we get into development, so at the end of that, we're going to take about 9 weeks here, or excuse me, start at week number 9, and we're going to say that takes 12 weeks. And then deployment is going to take that last week, and it's just going to take just the last week, right? So this is the overall set of activities that we're going to go to our client with and say, hey, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And obviously when we're proposing this to our client, we probably provide them with a lot of detail about what to expect during those phases. The purpose here of Treya is to track the numbers behind it, the quantitative data that tells us what's going to happen in our company and their company when we go through these deals. Now, we've set up the activities, the general timelines. What we need next is to put together how much are these things going to cost? And the way that we come to those numbers is, well, who's working on these things and how much time are they spending? And for that, we need to have a rate card. Now, this is something that you can configure at an organizational level. It's actually, if you click on company settings and go to your rate card, you could add some rates here. I've already created a few rates inside of here for the purpose of this demo, but it's pretty simple. You know, if I wanted to add another role, I could say that this is a project manager, and I think their rate's about 145, and I can save the changes here or up there. All right. Going back into that project plan, I'm now going to add people to this project team, the people I think should be involved. So I'm clicking on this plus account or this plus person button, selecting project manager. Maybe I got a software engineer and I have a designer. You're going to have potentially different roles depending on your business. But we want to be able to make sure that we account for those roles. They might also have the same bill rate, by the way. That's okay if you have a blended rate. That's totally fine. You just enter the same rate on the rate card. But the idea is that you want to know who's doing what so you can do resource planning in the future across all of your deals. So the project manager, I can enter in the number of hours I expect them to spend in each one of these phases, or that I'm charging the client for. It's kind of up to you. You could put these numbers in here and have them calculated, but you go to your client with something a little bit different. This is for you to calculate your information. So I'll say, hey, during discovery, the project manager, I want them to spend 20 hours. Great. So as you can see, it's going to compute the rate of that project manager and compute the total cost for the project of that project manager, as well as it's also going to compute the amount for that particular phase, just in case you want to break it up by phase. For each one of these items, I'm going to enter an amount. I don't have to enter an amount. Maybe the UX designer is not, well, the UX designer is probably involved during discovery. Maybe the software engineer is not involved during discovery. And I can say for the designer, I could enter the number of hours, or I could say, I could do it as a percentage. I could say, well, this is really their jam, so I need them spending 100% of the time on this project. The great thing about percentages versus hours is as I change, let's say the client comes back and says, well, listen, we only have budget for 2 weeks of discovery. So you go in, you update it, you say, great, 2 weeks. You'll notice that that is going to change the amount that they are charging for, right? Because it's a percentage of the total amount of time that's being spent. You could also enter information in, I'm gonna change this back to 4. You could also enter information as days or weeks. So I could say, hey, and during the proof of concept, I really need that project manager for about 2 weeks. Regardless of how long it is, they're gonna spend about 2 weeks. And for that software engineer, I'll use percentages again. And then for that designer, I need to spend about 20 days. Cool. And I can go in, I can fill out the rest of these, and I'm just going to say 100%, 100%, 100%. For deployment, the project manager is gonna spend a day. Software engineer is gonna spend 2 days, and that designer is gonna spend 8 hours. Great. And so now we have the project defined. We know what our different activities are that we are breaking the work up into. We know who's going to be on that project, how much time they're spending, and because we know their bill rate, we have the amount that they're going to cost as a per person amount, as well as a total project total. And we also have this concept of milestones. So if you right click, you can add a milestone row, and you can drag rows around. So I can drag the milestone row up, I can drag the proof of concept row down. That doesn't change where their start week or their number of weeks are. It changes which milestone they're in. So I can say, hey, maybe we have discovery and development. Those are the beginning of the project. I don't even like that. I like development better over here. We'll drag the proof of concept up here. That sounds better. And I'll say this is the proof of concept milestone, right? Maybe no, let's call this the beta milestone because we're doing a discovery, we're doing a proof of concept, and that allows us to break up our activities into smaller chunks and gives us some pricing information about each one of those chunks. And you'll see here, there's always a project complete milestone, which is anything that remains after all the other milestones. And there's a project total, which is if you add up all the milestones. And that's just gonna give us a really good indication of how we break up our work. And what's great about this is when we go into the billing and invoicing tab, based on that project plan, we are going to get an invoice schedule, and we can configure the way that our invoices schedule is built based on all the different parameters you might use in your business. So whether you're doing a fixed fee, in which case, hey, that $239,000 that we're charging for this project, that is the price of this project. Or we're doing time and materials, where we're saying, well, we've estimated that we're going to be able to spend this much time with these different roles. And maybe you're signing up for a not to exceed of $239,000. Or maybe you're going to the client with something a little bit different, but you have the math here, and that's important, right? And so you are configuring these different variables that construct the deal and the invoice schedule, and it builds this invoice schedule because when you go to a client, especially bigger clients, they're going to plug this into the procurement system on their side. They want to know generally when an invoice is going to hit and generally for how much it is. And if you could be even more specific, exactly when it's going to hit and exactly for how much it's going to be, that's great too. That would be a fixed fee on a recurring schedule, and after work is completed, and we're going to do it every 4 weeks. Maybe we'll do it every 2 weeks. It really depends on the client, right? And these are your options, and it's going to really help you out when you're doing this type of work and giving your client that type of insight into what to expect. The milestones that we saw in the project plan, if we want to invoice based on milestone, it's going to break up that work, and that's when you send your invoices. And maybe we send them at the beginning of a milestone, maybe we send them at the completion of the milestone. The dates for milestones are obviously estimated. You don't know exactly when you're going to finish them. You just kind of know, right? And you're given a ballpark. These invoices and this invoice schedule is based off the start date of the project, which is something that you have control over. Now, you can of course change the start date in here, but what I've realized is when you're managing a number of deals, a lot of times you're syncing up with your team weekly or on some regular basis, and you're going through each one of the deals that you have in the different stages, and you're saying, okay, well, time already went past on when we thought we were going to start this mobile watch app. When do we think the new start date's going to be? And said, well, talk to the client. They said, we're going to get kicked off next week if we can get the statement of work signed this Wednesday. Great. I'll change that date, get that updated, go back into here, and all my billing and invoices are going to be based off of that new date. Okay. As you're going through this process, I'm clicking on deals and I'm looking at the different phases. I'm obviously I'm able to drag these deals into the different phases. And the goal being we drag it eventually into closed one. And, the phases are set up so they're basics, right? When you're identifying the opportunity, putting together the proposal, and then finally they've kind of said yeah to the proposal, and then you're negotiating some of the final terms. And so when we dig into here and we want to send them a proposal, or if we want to send them a statement of work, you already have a process for that. Treya is not going to take this over for you. You know how to set that up and how your clients like that information. Maybe you want something very, very pretty, something very, very formal for statement of work. So the idea is that all the data that exists in your project plan, the invoice schedule, the rate card, the total price, the length of the project, when you want to get that into a structure that you're sending to your client, you hit export up here in the top right corner. You select which items you would like to be in that, and you just hit copy to clipboard. Say, great, copy to clipboard. I'm just going to put this in a Google Doc, paste this guy in there, and all that data is going to come out here, and maybe I copy and paste this invoice schedule into my statement of work. Maybe I put this into a fancy slide in a proposal, right? The data that you have in Treya is exportable into whatever format that you want to put it into. All right. And that is the basics of Treya. This is the core functionality. Obviously, as we've talked about, the goal of Treya is to take this data to build really, really valuable insights for your company. So you'd be able to predict revenue, be able to predict resource needs and hiring. And so what we want to do at this stage is we want to make sure that the way that the data gets into Treya, the core functionality that I've just showed you, that actually does the work you need it to do, that this makes sense for your business, that it's a streamlined process. And once we have this part working, we're already currently working on the analytics and metrics part of the application that's going to give you that really great top level insight based on all the deals and all the leads that you have in your business right now. So I really appreciate you giving this a test drive. I really hope that you structure some deals inside of Treya that's going to help us drive the next phase of it so you get that insight once we build that feature set. And most importantly, if you have any feedback, there's something that you can't do, if something breaks, please reach out to me directly. We will get it fixed immediately. We will get a feature scheduled. This is a tool that's built for you and your business. And I just, again, really appreciate you giving it a chance. Thank you.